Hello there, I'm the Biblical Translator, and I wanted to talk about singledom today because a lot of people who are single somehow feel as though they're inferior or missing out, and they feel as though their purpose is to be with someone. So today's scripture talks about that, and it's from 1 Corinthians 7. So, I read my story, so sit back and relax. This scripture relates to us today because many people quietly wonder whether being single means they are missing something, falling behind, or somehow incomplete. And 1 Corinthians 7 speaks directly into that fear with calm, practical voice that says a person's worth and purpose are not measured by whether they are married or not. In this chapter, Paul is writing to a community where people are anxious about relationships, sex, marriage, and spiritual life, and his response is surprisingly balanced. He does not attack marriage, and he does not glorify loneliness. Instead, he explains that both marriage and singledom can be good gifts, and the value of each depends on how a person lives before God within that state, rather than the state itself. The heart of the message is that being single is not a defect or a delay. It is a legitimate way of living that can carry its own freedom and clarity. Paul points out that a single person often has fewer divided responsibilities. They have more time, emotional space, and flexibility to focus on the spiritual growth, service, or personal calling. This does not mean married people cannot be devoted to God, but it acknowledges a simple human reality. Marriage brings shared duties, shared decisions, and shared concerns. You think about another person's needs constantly, which is loving and right, but it also means your attention is naturally spread across more areas. Singledom, in contrast, can create a kind of open space where a person can move, serve, learn, or travel more freely. And for some people, this freedom isn't emptiness, but purpose. At the same time, the chapter is realistic about human desire and emotional need. Paul recognizes that not everyone is built the same way. Some people deeply desire companionship, intimacy, and family life, and for them marriage is not a weakness, but a healthy and honourable path. He is not commanding everyone to remain single. He is saying that if you are single, you are not spiritually second class. And if you marry, you are not spiritually compromised. The moral principle underneath is that faithfulness, self-control, and love matter more than marital status. The question is not, are you single or married, but how are you living in the condition you are in? The theological way of seeing this is that God works through ordinary life situations rather than only through dramatic roles. In this view, singledom is not a waiting room for real life, but a part of real life itself. A single person can show patience, generosity, discipline, and compassion just as powerfully as a married person. Another perspective emphasizes calling, the idea that different people are equipped for different paths. Some are genuinely content and effective while single, and their energy flows outward into the community, work, or ministry. Others are strengthened and matured through partnership and family life. Neither is morally superior. Each has its own tests and its own opportunities for growth. What makes this teaching practical is how it removes comparison. Many people measure themselves against people who are marrying, having children, or reaching milestones, and quietly assume that they are behind schedule if they're not doing the same. This scripture cuts through that pressure by reminding us that spiritual maturity is not tied to a social timeline. A single person can live a full, responsible, loving life right now without apology. They can invest in friendships, develop skills, care for relatives, contribute to their community, and deepen their faith without feeling as though everything is temporary or second rate. The value of singledom here is not isolation, but undivided attention to oneself and to God. The ability to choose where your energy goes without constant negotiation. There is also an honesty about self-knowledge. Paul encourages people to understand their own strengths and struggles. If remaining single leads someone into bitterness, loneliness, or constant temptation, then marriage may be wiser. If marriage would trap someone in resentment or distraction from their calling, remaining single may be healthier. The principle is discerning rather than pressure. It acknowledges that people are not identical and that wisdom involves recognizing what helps you live a stable, loving, and faithful life instead of forcing yourself into a mold that does not fit. In everyday terms, this teaching speaks to the person who comes home to an empty flat and wonders if something is wrong with them. And it also speaks to the person juggling marriage and family who wonders if they have lost personal freedom. It reassures both that their situation is not a spiritual ranking. What matters is how they conduct themselves, whether they live with integrity, kindness, self-control, and devotion to what is right. Singledom can be a season of building strength, clarity, and service rather than merely waiting for change. Marriage can be a place of learning, patience, sacrifice, and shared love rather than merely fulfilling expectations. Each state carries responsibility. Each state carries dignity. The chapter also challenges the idea that fulfillment only comes from romance. It reminds listeners that human life is broader than one relationship category. Friendships, family bonds, meaningful work, creativity, and faith are all parts of a complete life. When singledom is seen through this lens, it becomes less about absence and more about capacity, the capacity to grow, to contribute, and to become stable within oneself rather than seeking identity only through partnership. This does not dismiss the beauty of marriage. It simply prevents marriage from becoming the sole definition of success or belonging. So the lasting behavioral principle is contentment joined with responsibility. Whether a person stands single or married, they are encouraged to live deliberately, honour their commitments, and use their circumstances wisely rather than resentfully. Singledom is valuable not because it's superior, but because it can hold purpose, discipline, and service, just as marriage can hold love and companionship. The scripture gently shifts the focus from status to character, from comparison to faithfulness, and from anxiety about the future to steadiness in the present. It tells the listener that their life is not on pause, that they're not unfinished, and that dignity and usefulness are available in the condition they are in right now, if they choose to live it with clarity, care, and devotion. 1 Corinthians 7, King James Version, teaches that both marriage and singledom are honourable paths. The central principle is contentment and faithfulness in one's present condition, recognizing that spiritual worth and purpose are not determined by relationship status, but by character, self-control, and devotion to living rightly before God. And I hope that landed well for someone out there, because a lot of people do feel as though they're deficient because they're single. Some people even think it's ordained that you have to be married. But what this is saying is that you are good regardless of your marital status. And I hope that's reassuring, and I hope it helps you start the day with a smile. So you take care now and be good and be faithful and take care.